Hello and welcome to the Guts Podcast. I'm Joey Donovan Guido, and today we're going to be talking once again with Scott Savage. In case you missed it, in part one of our two-part series, we talked about men and men's challenges, and today we're going to be diving into men's opportunities. Scott ran a men's group called Acumen for 10 years, so he's got a lot of insight into the minds of men, the emotions of men, and how we work and how we can progress, and what the opportunities are that we may not see ourselves if we're suffering and struggling. Once again, Scott, I'd like to welcome you to the podcast.
Thanks, Joey. It's great to be here.
So last time we spoke about things like men and emotions, relationships. We talked a little bit about being a dad and a man and the human being part of human being. And today, my question to lead off with is, where do you see the opportunities for men?
Well, maybe an easy way to think about it is going back to the balance idea. Um, what in my life is too much and what is too little? To reflect on that. So for many men, the too much is work, right? Or the too much might be withdrawing, staying at home and playing games is one way of withdrawing. Um, but for almost all of us, we have to find the courage to get that balance right and to show up more, to say things courageously. We need to share our opinions and our feelings. And in order to speak courageously, we have to be willing to be misunderstood. We have to be willing to be criticized, and we have to be willing to be just wrong. Um, Without that willingness to be vulnerable, um, it's not going to come through right. It's not going to help us. Um, I can think of so many men who exemplify the notion of mansplaining, and
Mhm.
they know so much about so many things, and that's who they are, and they always have more to say. Um, and that's too much. They need to listen more. So finding that balance. Um, I was contacted a few years ago by a old friend from college, which was many years ago. And he reached out to me and he said, he lives in another country now. He said, Scott, I have no friends. And I thought I'd reach out to you and see about a relationship. And we met a couple times uh, online and we had a couple good conversations. And then he started to show his true colors and he was the expert on everything
Hmm.
and gave me no space and no credibility uh, and no agency. And I told him, I don't need that in my life. I got plenty of that already. I don't need someone else who's just going to uh, be Mr. Know-it-all. So I terminated that relationship. So that's one thing we can do is set boundaries around how we let people interact with us, what we're willing to accept, and as well as around our time, what's most important for us to be doing.
Yeah, and I find one of the things I've struggled with is setting boundaries, not to a degree with the outside world, but also setting boundaries with myself
Hmm.
and making that space for myself and not putting someone or something before what I need. And I think as men, it's sometimes hard to think about what we need or what we need that we're not getting. So, is that happening because we are letting people step all over us or not respect us, like this potential friend? Or is it because we are stepping on ourselves
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
whatever reason, because we just feel like there's no room for us, or maybe we feel like we don't deserve to have what we need? that self-talk in the mind, if I had it all the time at one point where I just felt so bad about myself, so inadequate. And then I started to realize that's not me.
Mm,
That's the voice in my head.
yeah.
And the voice in my head is not me, it's just my thoughts.
Yeah. You're reminding me of, so a few years ago, I was participating in some psychotherapy, and the therapist, who was quite a smart man, uh, said, "So, when you were a kid, you were the youngest and nobody ever listened to you. So you became a consultant. So now people seek your opinion, and are very interested in what you have to say." And that made me smile. Still does. I think he was really onto something there.
Hmm. I thought there was gonna be a punchline there.
Yeah, no, no punchline. Uh, just a sweet truth, a good realization.
Hmm.
Uh, it didn't change anything, but uh, it explains some things.
Yeah.
Um, we all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. We all want to be appreciated. Um, and that can be a real art, to let someone else know that you understand and appreciate them and value them, especially if you're talking all the time, telling them how things are.
Hmm. You just made me realize somebody said to me not even a year ago that we often take on roles in our lives that give others what we never got.
Mm.
And so it's a little bit of tangential to what you just said, but I thought about how I I never got support, the support that I needed, that I wanted. I never got the kindness that I wanted from my dad.
Mm.
And here I am, a coach and a podcaster and a dad who really works on that specific intention quite a bit.
Why do you think you didn't get that from him?
He didn't know how.
Mm.
So my dad's father died when my dad was 2. So he never had an actual father figure. He had an older brother, Uncle Steve, who was great. Uncle Steve was super great, but he wasn't dad, and it wasn't his job to be dad. And so I think like many men, even who he didn't get any kind of a role model, as opposed to some who got this role model of a man who didn't know how to express himself, who didn't know how to show love or was afraid to. So either way, the kid kind of gets the short end of the stick because they're not getting these things. And really, when you think about it, the dad's not getting that joy and that satisfaction either.
Yeah, very true.
Hmm.
Very true. So I think, something we can do is to find out. This pulls on what I said earlier, where we're overdoing it and where we're underdoing it. So what are we not showing up for? And what are we showing up too much for? So it might be, in a traditional American family 40 years ago, the father was the breadwinner and he was the disciplinarian, and he wasn't expected to spend a lot of time with the kids or show love, that sort of thing. So there was a too much, too little scenario. And uh, culture has shifted enough so there's more opportunity for men to be more balanced with regard to that. And certainly there's some men who are stay-at-home dads, and their partner does raises the money and goes to work. And if they're both up for that, that's awesome. So there's more flexibility in role available now, and we have to find the one that suits us really. Um, so for myself, one of the things I did early on, I realized I didn't like working in a large organizational system, a big company, or a big government or nonprofit. So I found my own way, kind of the Frank Sinatra things. I did it my way. And it was hard a lot of times. And sometimes I felt like there was something wrong with me. Well, why
Mm.
can't I do that? Well, I'm going to go with it's just not who I was. And I was happier on the outside as a consultant. It worked well. I've helped many hundreds, if not thousands of people in my career. Um, Using those skills and making a difference was satisfying for me. Um, and the older I got, the more comfortable I became in that role. There were parts that were very difficult. The whole business part and the marketing part were hard, but it was a good fit and I made it work. And that's what we all need to do. Other people love to be in a big organizational system. Some people love to be the boss. Some people don't want to be the boss. Uh, you got to find your jam.
Yeah, yeah, I'm in agreement with you. The corporate world was not fun. And this really ties into a couple of things for me. Is one is, finding that balance and finding what works for you. So professionally, you found what worked for you. And, if that works for you to work for a corporation, great, that's fine. And also what works for you personally. It's we talked a little bit about self-care and how a lot of men I've worked with, both with my daddy brain workshops back in the day and now, is there's a lot of guilt that comes around doing exactly what you're saying, trying to find their way, what they want, what brings them fulfillment. And I remember once a family member said to me, and I was not a stay-at-home dad, but I worked from home and was very involved in the raising of especially my older son before we moved, and then I was at a corporation for 9, 10 hours a day. Somebody said to me, Joey, it's not your job to raise your kids. It's your job to go to work and make the money.
Mhm.
And I was floored. I bit my tongue because it was not an appropriate place to get into it. And you know what? They're entitled to their opinion, but that's not who I am. Heck yeah, it's my job to be there for my kids. And this was one of the opportunities that I took as a dad. I could have been disengaged, but my whole relationship with my wife was one where I wanted as much equality as possible. That's where I was coming from. For some men, that might be a harder scenario to see, but it's a good example of where the outside world is telling you one thing, go to work and make the money, where inside your heart is breaking, which is what happened to me when I was going to work for 9 hours, 10 hours a day. I would be in tears
Mm.
on my 45-minute ride to work because I wasn't there. And I guess it still bugs me. And then I remember my son, Joss, my younger son, he wrote, I've got it on my wall. He said, Dad, I wish you were home more. And
Mm.
then fast forward a few years, and here I was running my own business after a really rough time, and I was home more. And he'll still to this day say, Dad, I'm so glad when that happened. I know it wasn't always easy, but I'm so glad that you made that change and that you were here for us and we were with you more. And so, yeah,
How wonderful is that? That's worth the
yeah.
trip.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah. So one of our opportunities is to figure out what stops us from pursuing our path, our own path.
Mm.
Um, you know that statement to you, your job is to be out making the money. The nice thing about it is it's unequivocal. It's crystal clear. And if you're looking for guidance that's crystal clear, well, that'll work. but if not, if it doesn't fit your soul.
Mhm. Yeah. So what are some of the ways that you would suggest someone who's in a situation where they wanna start to discover, to take an opportunity to figure out what it is they want from life, whether it's professionally, personally, spiritually?
Yeah. Well, there's certainly plenty of different avenues. Um, some of it a person can accomplish through reflection. Journaling is a great way to do it. Make sure when you write your journal that you will never show it to anybody so that you can be honest with yourself. Um, I'm a big fan of psychotherapy. I think everybody can benefit from getting. You don't have to be sick or suffering. There's always more we can learn about how to be more fulfilled in our lives. Groups, appropriate groups. So some groups are not going to help you find this. Some of them are focused on activities that are not going to help you find yourself. They might be just another distraction. Uh, many of us just keep busy to keep from finding ourselves and to keep us from feeling our feelings. There are plenty of books, um, webinars, classes, lots of ways to help you do some self-examining and sort through the layers and layers that make us up so that you can find a good answer to find your own true north.
Yeah. Those are some really good suggestions, and it's really what works for you, right? Because, I've had men say, "I don't like to write, I'm not a good writer," and then next week they come back and they're like, "I just tried it."
Mm,
And 5 pages later, I realized I actually did have stuff to say. And one of the great things about journaling that I found is it's a way to process. It's a way to metabolize stress or sadness or sometimes even trauma, to put it on the page. So, if you don't have somebody that you can share those innermost hard things with, putting it on paper can be of great value.
yes. Yeah. And for many people, art, drawing, painting,
Mhm.
sculpting, uh, is a great way to work our feelings. Oh, and I neglected before in my long list of resources a coach, right? Like Joey
Yep.
can help you sort through these kinds of things for sure. We need
Scott,
to
you
realize
you
we have choices. Often we have
Mhm.
more choices than we believe, so we set up limits, self-limiting beliefs that keep us from exploring different directions.
Yeah. And sometimes we're so close, obviously it's our life, so we're so close to it all that it's hard to see sometimes things that are right in front of us until someone like a coach or a therapist or a good friend says, "Hey, have you thought about this?" And then all of a sudden something shifts, and it's like, "Wow, that's been there the whole time and I didn't see it."
Yeah,
And one of the things I like to encourage people to do is to find a way to make space for themselves so that there's more than whatever challenge or life situation is currently staring them down. So, and what I mean by making space is that whether it's just taking some slow, deep breaths to kind of, lower your heart rate, which immediately physically starts to tell your brain, go through your vagus nerve, that, hey, I'm okay.
yeah,
I'm all right. And so you can shift some of that attention that you have from fight or flight or do, survive, to frontal lobe. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, I never thought of this, but what if I try this? What if I try it? And this goes back to something Brian Tracy used to say. A lot of people, children, adults, I'll say to them, well, what is it that you want to do? What is one thing that you want to do that you're not doing? Whether it's career, whether it's personal, whether it's with their kids, with their partner, it doesn't matter. And a lot of people will say, I don't know. I get the typical, I don't know. I have no freaking clue. And then I learned this from Brian Tracy. You ask a follow up question. Well, if you woke up tomorrow and you were already there, what would you be doing?
Hmm,
If you did know, what would it be?
nice.
And so I kind of added two questions together there. The first one being, if you did know, what would it be? And what would that look like tomorrow if you were just in it? And I have very rarely had a person say, I don't know again. Typically, they pause as if I've removed reality from it and they blurt out something very clear.
Hmm,
I'm like, all right, well, let's start there.
yeah. Yeah. So it's useful to ask what stops us, from doing that.
Yeah.
And lots of things. And maybe it's not the right time today. Maybe you do have kids to take care of and you can't change your career on a pivot. You need to make money. But it's something you can start working towards, taking on new skills, looking at different opportunities. Well, the world's really shifting now with the development of AI in the last few years. It's changing a lot of things and creating opportunities in some areas and lack of opportunities in other ways. But those kind of pivots happen in society regularly. So we got to be ready to follow a pivot too.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it can be scary also. And that's one of the things that we worked on in Acumen that I learned from you that now I bring forward and help others with is something I learned from you that I bring forward to others is looking for this flexibility, for these opportunities. And also really one of the things I learned from you is how do we make things bite-sized? So yes, maybe a change in careers doesn't work right now, but maybe the life skill works. And you also made me think of something Daniel Amen says. He's a big brain guy, and he says that if you get your brain healthy, the rest will follow.
Hmm,
And yeah, it's really interesting, and it's a lot of the times I think we're so exhausted, we feel so overwhelmed, and this is a language I like to change with people. It's if I say I am overwhelmed, I am defining myself in a very
hmm,
small box as a person overwhelmed. But on the other hand, if I say I feel overwhelmed, now I'm making space between who I am, what I am, and that feeling, right?
yeah.
Because we're not our feelings, our thoughts and emotions. They're things we experience.
They come and go.
They come and go, and they are not us.
Right.
And I think once I started to learn that, I started to see that, they only have power if we give it to them.
And if we deny them,
Mm-hmm.
we need to be conscious of those things and then they let us go. They set us free.
Yep. Yep.
Gotta be willing to be sad. Gotta know when you're hurt. Gotta know when you've hurt other people. It's hard work, but it's
Yeah.
important.
It is. It is. And then the one final note from me is there's a lot of things you're talking about, and processing these emotions can come down to something as simple as movement.
Hmm,
And I like to use the word movement because, some people like to go to the gym and exercise like crazy people for an hour. And some people, if they did that, they wouldn't be able to walk. So, what kind of movement works for you? We've gone on many walks together.
hmm,
My wife, who has fibromyalgia, she likes to go to a warm salt water pool.
hmm.
For me, I like to go out for what I call walk runs because I'm not quite at the place where I like to run the whole time anymore. And walking the whole time doesn't always feel as good as putting in some bits of running. So like really defining like what works with your lifestyle, with your current level of health that is some kind of movement.
Yep.
And if you're not doing this, you will be amazed at what it can do for your mind,
Yes.
for the metabolization of stress, and just clearing some of this stuff that feels so heavy, so hard. Just kind of leaving it on, for me, I leave it on the road and I let Mother Earth take it and transform it into positive energy. It's a very easy intention that I'll do while I'm out there. But I think, when it comes to self care, and you, Scott, were one of my first steps towards self care, the work
Hmm.
we did together. And it really, comes down to trial and error, what works for you and what doesn't. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. So what? Try something else. But like you mentioned, making that time, making that space to feel what you feel and to start to reflect on what it is you need. That's a good start.
'Tis indeed.
Well, on that note, I've got one final question for you.
Yes.
What do you do for self care?
Well, as I approach my 70th year, not too far away, and as anyone who's been on this path will tell you, taking care of the body takes more and more focus. It's less self-cleaning than it used to be. So, part of the greatness of my recent move is that we live on top of a steep hill. So we have some wonderful steep roads to walk up and down. I love to be outside. Part of the way I've accepted living in the cold north is I get a gym membership in the winter, and uh, my wife and I play racquetball together. And we've modified the rules. Rule number one is don't do anything that'll make you hurt, get you injured, in other words. Um, and rule two is don't do anything that's going to injure the other person. We don't care much about scoring. Uh, I think about someone I know who used to be very good at racquetball. He's one of my mentors and used to play very competitively. And my way of playing racquetball wouldn't satisfy him at all, at least not then. Now at 70, his body's in a shape where he can't play racquetball, which is very sad. Um, so I do that. I also enjoy the whirlpool at the gym and steam room. And those are all ways I take care of both my mind and my body. And I try and maintain my good friendships. Um, it's a little harder now that I don't live as close to most of those men, but I still reach out and still get time with them to talk and do man stuff like go for walks or have a beer. Uh, so self care is important.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I want to thank you once again for making time to do this with us. And for those of you who are listening, if you're interested in learning more about Scott, his coaching, the other kind of work he's done, you can visit his website at www.savagegroup.biz. And if you're looking for some of the resources we talked about today, you can always send me an email and I'm happy to share them. Or you can go to the resources page on the joeydonovanguido.com website. It's got a bunch of stuff on there for audiobooks, in-print books, and other kind of different meditations and mindfulness practices that you can kind of take a look at and say, yeah, that looks like fun, or, I'd prefer to try this, and just get yourself on that path to self-care, to finding the opportunities for yourself as a man in this world so that you can have a more gracious life, more things to be have gratitude from, and maybe suffer a little less. And with that, thank you, Scott, again for being here.
Thanks, Joey. It's been great. Be well.